Make it a regular habit of checking in on your worthiness, because when you put yourself out there in a big way, when you take a leap of faith, when you endeavor to something that's, you perhaps have no idea how it could ever come to fruition, that really does challenge you, and it challenges your understanding of yourself. And sometimes we struggle with worthiness. Am I worthy of this? Am I worth it?
For those who didn't watch that, who just want a 1-minute snippet of what the currency of advocates is.
The currency of advocates, in this instance, I'm using the word currency. Think Bitcoin or the dollar or a stock, and think about what it means to have an advocate. We are advocates. We have advocates, varying numbers of advocates. But the thing to think of here is investing in building advocates. Okay, so what is the number of advocates that you currently have for your business or your practice? Doubling your number of advocates is probably one of the most impactful things that you could do for your business. You just can't imagine what happens when you do that.
Welcome to the Be Better broadcast. Today, we have a very special guest because he is a close friend of mine and he is a returning guest on the Be Better broadcast. The last time you saw this man was April of 2023, and he is back. His name is Todd Bailey. And for those of you who don't know Todd Bailey owns a full-service creative agency specializing in photography, videography, and strategic marketing. With a passion for storytelling and a commitment to excellence, he captures moments, crafts compelling narratives, and elevates brands to new heights. Whether it's capturing breathtaking images like the headshots that he does for myself, producing engaging videos, or devising strategic marketing campaigns, Todd is dedicated to exceeding expectations and helping our clients achieve their goals. I don't think Todd's introduction does him justice, because while he is all of those things, he is above all someone who is heavily focused on helping the people around him and the people he cares about become successful. He'll do anything for anyone. He's got a lot of friends for good reasons, because he cares about people. He wants to see them succeed. And from our first conversation, I'm sure you could have gathered that if you watched that. But for those who haven't watched that, we'll dive into some of those concepts of advocacy as well. So without further ado, the man, the myth, the legend, Todd Bailey. Good to have you, brother.
Thanks for having me again, Brandon. Great to see you.
Great to see you too, man. How you doing?
Doing well. Excited for Q2 2024. I'm in the process of some strategic planning, and I've certainly identified that that happens to not be a strength of mine. So, it's like you're only as good as your greatest weakness. Well, one of my weaknesses is planning, and so I've been working really hard on getting better at doing my own planning for the quarter and the year, and goal setting, and just continuing to keep that flow.
Is there a specific way that you like to plan? Like when you do sit down and do it, is there a way that you like to look ahead and ask, where do I want to be? What do I want to do? What does one of those strategic sessions look like?
Well, I got to tell you, in the last probably 6 months, I've gone ahead and hired a business coach, and that's been so transformative for me and helpful. But one of the things we've talked about recently is called the 5 ways, and you simply breaking down things like leads and conversions and number of transactions. And it's a little bit monotonous, but the numbers don't lie, right? And so I've done a little bit of a look back, and as I begin to look forward, I'm trying to apply a template to that. So some people are really, really just naturally gifted at planning, and I'm not afraid to say that's not a strength of mine. But I've also found that due to my visual nature as a creator, that I tend to utilize things that are visual in my planning. So whether I'm creating a Canva deck or something like that, I like to make it very interesting looking, and that sort of helps me um, embody what it is that I'm trying to accomplish.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to ask you this question. For those who don't know you, you are a musician, you're a photographer, a videographer, a brand marketer. If we really just take all of those things and compress it into one, you are a creative. And I personally believe that everyone is a creative in some shape, way, or form. So when I find people that often are suffering more in the world. They're unhappy, they're depressed, they're anxious, they don't know what they want to do, they're unhappy with where they are. I typically find that those people are either bored or not expressing their creativity, and usually both. And that's why they find themselves in that hole. And I've been in that hole myself. And the more I've found that I've expressed my creativity, the happier I felt overall. So my question for you is, do you agree with that? And how did you begin expressing your creativity? Is this something you observed in your parents? I know you're very close with your dad. You're always posting about him. Like, where did this creative nature come from?
Yeah, well, I believe there's a romanticism and a magic in creativity, right? If you think about it from a music perspective, we all sort of have this vision of the musician at the piano with the candles, and what comes out the other end is an amazing symphony or a hit pop record or something like that. It's romantic. I love the idea of closing the doors. Maybe you're in solitude. Maybe you just take out a blank sheet of paper and you just kind of let this creative process happen, and then watching it manifest. It's sort of like raising a child. It's your baby. You get to see the fruits of that vision. And where it started for me was I think I was just immersed in it. My father's always singing, constantly, all the 80s music, right? And subsequently, as a young boy, I went to school and also would sing a lot. And people kind of noticed, and chorus teachers would kind of pull me to the front of the room and be like, "Hey, do that again." And for me, it was just kind of a cultural thing. I just sang because we were always singing. So I would take out toy boxes and make drum sets and try recording things with little tape players and writing music at a very young age. And I was asked to participate in some stage productions. I believe I was probably around 6 or 7 years old, was the first one that I did. And that was my first taste of being on stage, and certainly was afraid and all those sorts of things. But that's how I grew up on stage performing. You think about people like Jim Carrey and his beginnings with comedy, and he always talks about his dad was a funny guy too, and that was their culture in their home, right? And so I had the space to be creative my entire life. I had a lot of quiet time as a teenager, so I would sit with my guitar and just play music and just be with myself, and that's harder and harder to do today. And so for that reason, I think in some ways it's harder and harder to be creative because it's harder to create that solitude. We're so connected and overconnected and
Mm.
bombarded with, social media and just all these things that are constantly flying at us. So I really try to take time to be quiet, and I think that that's important. Meditation is something new for me, and that's been really helpful. But I love the creative process. I love the idea of manifesting something from those creativity pockets in your brain and seeing it come to fruition. It's a beautiful thing, and it's to me it's the closest thing to magic.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm reading this book called The Artist's Way. And have you read this book, by the way?
I haven't, but I'm going to write it down.
Dude, okay, so I recommend books very seldom. This is a fantastic book. It's by Julia Cameron. It came out in the early 90s, and it's wild reading this book because, I've read all of Tony Robbins' books. I've read a lot of self-help books that came out in the late 90s, 2000s, and a lot of what they talk about is in Julia Cameron's book, and she specifically talks about creativity. And she talks about, I forget the exact term she uses, but she talks about how we're creative, and then we express that creativity, especially as children. But as we grow up, we begin to put that creativity to the back burner and we stop expressing it. And we move ourselves into jobs and careers that don't allow us to express that creativity. And because it's locked up and not used, it begins to die and to wilt inside of us. And we feel those emotions that I mentioned earlier: suffering, pain, uncertainty. And it's because we're not expressing our creativity. Now, I love this book. I think you'd like it, especially with what you do, and I recommend it to everybody. But I'd like to know, you are in a unique position where you have combined your creativity with business acumen at the same time. And even when I went and got headshots with you, you've always got an intern with you. You've always got someone that you're teaching and mentoring, which is a beautiful thing. And the biggest thing that I love that you instill, not the biggest thing maybe, but one of the biggest things that you instill in these people is you can be a great photographer, you can be a great videographer, you can be the best in the world. But if you don't have the business side of it down, if you don't understand the business side of it and the people side of it and the communication and networking side of it, then you're going to be the best photographer in town, but nobody knows. Right. So when did you discover how to combine creativity with business? And is it like a dance that you do with the two? Does one take precedent over the other? What's your thoughts on this?
Well, I call it practical creativity. Okay, so it's a very different thing than, say, sitting down and making a painting for myself. It's the application of real world needs to derive outcomes that really accomplish things for people, right? And not to say that all creativity should be practical and useful, but I think that, maybe we apply the 80/20 rule to this. I sit down and write a lot of songs that nobody will ever hear, right? That's for me. But when I sit down with a client that has a message that they want to get out, I love the idea of being able to take those magical elements of creativity and applying it to their practical need and figuring out how to pull those two things to center. And both my parents owned businesses growing up, right? So you talk about culture again. I think, being immersed in the culture of business ownership, seeing what kind of life that gives. My parents were busy growing up, but they were always there for me. I had all the trappings of a middle class family, I suppose you could say, but they worked really hard for that, and I've always believed that hard work is really mission critical. And the more you can get laser focused and hard work derived in the direction of, your passion, if you can work towards that, what an endeavor to pursue in life. I can't imagine anything more important, honestly, because it really never feels like work. It's that old adage.
Very interesting. Yeah, the other thing about that too is you said you were immersed in a business environment with your parents, and I would say that I was the same way. My dad's a business owner. My mom she worked all throughout my childhood too as a waitress. So obviously, the better she performed, the more tips she got. So I very much grew up around that business mindset, right? And I think that definitely helps. But even still to this day, you now have invested with a business coach. You said to yourself, I want to take it to the next level. I want to get more focused. What do I need to do? And you made the conscious decision to hire and pay somebody to help you to take it to the next level. Have you found that that's helped you going and taking that because it's a leap, right? Taking a leap because it's not cheap to improve. Has that helped you so far?
Yeah, and I would add, when you think about making that commitment and saying, I want to make something better, I really want to dial in on the why behind that. My motto in the last year has been three words with a period between each: serve, period, more, period, better, period. And so, I didn't hire a coach to just necessarily excel my business and to become a titan of industry or anything like that necessarily. But I really wanted to focus on how can I prevent myself from, hitting the brakes on my business. And that kind of happened last year. I got a little overwhelmed and I had to hit pause almost and had to start turning people away, and I hated that.
Wow.
It wasn't fulfilling for me. And so therein is the reasoning behind why I have interns or I have people working around me, and I'm doing the same thing for them and trying to immerse them in what I do and to teach them to embrace this culture of serving. And it's been incredible because you don't know what you don't know, and when you endeavor to the heights of achievement, certainly you're going to come to a position where you just kind of say, I don't know what to do next, and
Yeah.
that's okay. That's okay.
What do you want to do next? Like when you think about future Todd, let me ask you this. Maybe I'll ask it a different way. How old are you now?
39, I'll be 40 in less than a month.
Awesome, dude. Freaking awesome. When's your birthday?
May 17th.
Okay, cool. I love that. So you're a Taurus then, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so you're a Taurus. Ben Wilcox is a Taurus. My son's a Taurus. That's very cool. Hey, if he turns out like you, brother, I'd be happy with that.
Send
And
him
I
over
mean
for an
that.
internship.
I love it. I love it. So, okay, let me ask this in a different way. So, you're approaching 40, right? A lot of people look at their life in decades. So, they look at, they're obviously 10 to 20, you're in school. And then when you're 20, you really start to discover yourself. You really start to discover what you like, what your abilities are. You get into the working world, and then you're in your 30s, right? So I turned 30 in February. When you look back at your time between 30 and 40, what do you think that decade taught you the most about yourself, the world, and really what were the biggest learnings that you took away from your 30s, you would say?
I would say if you get serious in your 30s, the world is ready to receive you from a professional standpoint. Not that the world isn't ready to receive you in your 20s, but certainly no matter how great you are, there's always that thing about being in your 20s, right? You're only going to be taken so serious, perhaps. Not to say that you shouldn't endeavor to do whatever you want to do, but there's always that kind of thing hanging. And then in your 30s, it's like, okay. By the way, I think there are studies done, and I read this or heard this somewhere, but the male brain, something about the age 30 and being fully developed by that age. Um, I feel like that's what happened with me. Once I hit 30, things just kind of started to align with what I really wanted, and I felt more clarity behind things. And then at the same time, I was taken a little bit more seriously, perhaps. I wasn't the kid in the room anymore.
Mm.
Um, and so that's the time I think your 30s to really get serious about how you want to craft your life. What does your family life look like? What does your professional life look like? Um, I couldn't say anything about the 40s because I'm not quite there yet, but I'm starting to put some ideas together for what I'd like that decade to look like.
What are some ideas you put together for it then?
So I really need to work on work-life balance a little bit more. Um, One of the things that you learn when you work with a coach is a business, what a business actually is a commercial, profitable enterprise that operates with or without you, right? Because otherwise you own a job, the rich dad, poor dad quadrants and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I'm so used to just being the hustler, just running the front of house, back of house delivery, discovery calls and just doing it all. And so I really want to get away from that. And I want to look at putting a vision together that could excite people to want to join my team and say, yeah, I get where you're coming from with this vision of serving more people better. And in order to do that, it takes a team and it takes process. And I want to build that out and I want to serve my communities to the best of our collective ability as a team with that vision in mind and sort of a servant's heart. I always believe that's important.
What kind of people would you be looking for that would help to take the burden off of you and what you're doing? Because I know that we talked about Costa Rica and you've already got other people who are shooting for you. You've got interns that you're mentoring and training. Like what people would you need in order to be more present in the other areas of your life aside from your business?
They say that you're never going to find a you exactly like you. You're one of a kind, Brandon. You're one of
Yeah.
a kind at what you do. But I do believe that there's alignment, right? There's people that I talk to that when I talk about what means the most to me and the way that we serve, people will, I get that, right? And then I sprinkle in the, oh, by the way, and we do that by serving with our creativity. And I think that's a cause that if you're a creative that's sitting at home wondering what your next career move is, uh, I think that's something that would excite someone, and I found that with my interns and with the people I've coached and trained and they love what we're doing and what we're building and the opportunities now are just they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger
Yeah.
and so it's fun and scary, and I'd love to meet anyone that has a creative passion and loves to serve others and would maybe like to hone the professional side of that. And I can help with that, and we can build something together. And it might be graphic design, it might be web design, it's whatever those passions are. I love to talk to people who are passionate. Period.
Super cool. Awesome. So, guys, there's going to be links in the description for Todd's website as well as his social medias. Don't be afraid to reach out to him, connect with him. This guy's a master connector, and he does it from a standpoint of not, labeling himself as a connector because he doesn't, but from someone who does it in the real world and builds relationships and connections. And when you're talking with Todd, it's like you're the only person that exists for him in that moment. And I experience that when I'm with you. I always leave your presence feeling better. And I know that's going to be the same for everyone. So you mentioned opportunities, and every time I see you, you've got new opportunities from left field, right field, and you're like always so excited about them. And you're like, this came from here, and I had no idea this was going to happen, but it did. And these opportunities aren't always business opportunities. Like you've got the band that you're playing with, you guys are playing in the basement, and like some of these guys you didn't even know before, and now you know them, and you're making music together. And again, you're expressing creativity. So you've always got new things going on. But before I ask you about where all these opportunities come from, and this kind of goes back to our last conversation that we had about the currency of advocates, I want to ask you what's changed there. But going back to the decades conversation, I have one last question for you. I'm curious to see what you'd say. So I'm 30 now. You're still in your 30s, but you're approaching your next decade. Knowing what you know about me and what I do career-wise and with the podcast, and just reaching 30 years old, what advice would you have for me, but also for other people who you don't know who turn 30 as well, and they're looking to really take that next step in their life and career? But mostly me. Mostly give me advice.
All right, Brandon, I would say this. Make it a regular habit of checking in on your worthiness. Because when you put yourself out there in a big way, when you take a leap of faith, when you endeavor to something that's, you perhaps have no idea how it could ever come to fruition, that really does challenge you, and it challenges your understanding of yourself. And sometimes we struggle with worthiness. Am I worthy of this? Am I worth it? Would it be worth somebody spending the money to come out to Costa Rica to learn from me? Would it be worth somebody's time to watch this podcast, right? And I think worthiness is something that you should check in on frequently. And that's one of the reasons why I talked about my mission being do more better. Because I've asked myself that question. Why would anybody endeavor to get mingled with Todd Bailey and my photo video marketing business? And I answer that by saying, because I'm here to serve. And if my business continues to grow, my mission is to serve more. And so I believe that I'm worthy of that growth, because that's, it's
That's
it's
your
a,
why.
it's my why, and it's a wholesome one, right? It's not like I need a fourth yacht out on the Cape or something like that. I'm not to say that's not nice, but I'm just saying, like, for me, it's about cause, it's about mission. And if those things are wholesome and you check in on your worthiness, what happens is you begin to get the tailwind that you need, and you say, yeah, I'm going to ask that question. I'm going to reach out to that prospect. I'm
Mm.
going to do that thing that perhaps a little bit of me said, am I worthy of that thing? So that's my advice. Check in on your worthiness and keep that wrapped up in your why. And that is a really, really powerful thing. It's a tailwind. It'll push you, it'll move you.
Wow.
And when you're ready to step across that threshold and do something big that you never thought you could do before, you kind of keep that behind you and it pushes you, right?
So how do you do that? How do you check in on your worthiness? And I did not expect you to say that, by the way. So this is intriguing. How do you check in on it? How do you feel more worthy?
I firstly, I in the last year, I've actually started doing more prayer and meditation. And so I think that you really have to become in tune with your core values. You really have to dig into that. This stuff takes time. And that's why I say check in on your worthiness, because if you have a worthiness check in once a week with yourself, you should be pen to paper. It's an activity that you do. And maybe things like prayer, meditation can help, because you're really, really visiting your core and doing that in a way that allows you to take and extract what you stand for, what you mean, why you're doing what you're doing. And I think that can help develop a sense of worthiness, because you've got your core values at that point. You're talking about how to amplify those through your vehicle. Your vehicle would be like your Be Better business or my Todd Bailey photo, video, and marketing. And I think you just have to really do a lot of reflection and inner reflection. And those two things, prayer and meditation, have really been transformative for me to develop a sense of worthiness in the last, I would say, since the new year.
What's up, Be Better family? It's Brandon Eastman here. And as a thank you for tuning in to the Be Better broadcast, I want to give you a very special gift. For a limited time, you can get a free digital copy of my book titled Be Extraordinary, Your Guide to Self-Mastery. This book is packed with insights and actionable steps that will help you to unlock your fullest potential in the 5 key areas of your life. But that's not all. Along with the book, I also want to give you the audiobook version absolutely free. Imagine having the power to transform your life right at your fingertips and in your ears anytime, anywhere. Go grab your copy at BeBetterIndustries.com/book. You'll also find the link in the episode show notes. Go and grab your copy and join me in making a positive impact on the world. Now back to the show. So your practice of prayer and meditation, what does that look like in your life right now? And what have you seen different, or not seen, but what have you felt differently in your life since you incorporated prayer and meditation? Because those things can look different for everybody. You might be praying to something or someone different than anybody else, which is fine, but it's the act of prayer and meditation, which is a very common theme on this show amongst people who are quote unquote successful. So how do you do that? And what benefits have you noticed since doing it?
So I wrapped this all up in a bow of morning routine. Um, it's probably every success book ever written or every successful speaker ever says morning routine, right? I've heard it a million times. And up until recently, I never did it. But I thought, well, now my coach is telling me to do it. I've read it in XYZ number of books. I've heard it on this many stages, and I'm going for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started my morning routine with the Waking Up app. And the
Oh, okay.
Waking Up app is just amazing. I can't recommend it enough. And that was my morning routine when I started. Okay. So I started small. And then I added in some prayer time. And so now my morning routine was starting to get a little bit bigger, right? And then I had a coaching call, and my coach said, yeah, my morning routine usually about 1 to 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
And I said, oh my goodness. Okay. So apparently there's more stuff I could sprinkle in here. All right. I thought I had a morning routine down, but that was really interesting to hear. So I thought, well, what else could I layer in there?
Yeah.
So I started layering in a little bit of exercise, right?
Yep.
And then I from the book Atomic Habits, I realized, you can begin to habit stack,
Yeah.
right? So what else can I habit stack? So while I'm doing this, maybe I sprinkle in a little workout. And while I'm doing that, I'll take my vitamins for the morning. And I began to build out this morning routine. And what you find out, like with any habit, is once it's developed, if you miss it, you like feel that
Oh,
viscerally,
yeah.
right?
Yes.
And that's where I am now. If I miss any part of that, or it just became really important. And what it gave me was, it gave me certainly back the mindfulness of being calm and in the presence. And I think now more than ever, that is so important. In this
Yeah.
digital age, even my kids, it's like they're just on devices, on devices, on devices. And it's like, guys, put them down. Let's have a conversation. Or let's just sit here and where it's quiet and we'll not talk. But
Yeah.
let's just be with ourselves for a second.
Have you found that morning routine has positively impacted your business?
Yes. It has, and I think it's such it impacts everything. I mean, when you show up to something, how you show up to that thing is how you show up to that thing. And I've been showing up with much more calm and poise than probably ever before. And
Yeah.
people have even made comments about it, like, "Wow, you got something going on? Like, what do you seem very like grounded and centered." And I say, thank you. I've been doing meditation, and it really does help. And the thing is,
Cool.
I've been sending people the Waking Up app trial. They give you a 30-day trial to share with others.
Yeah.
And I've had some great conversations with people who've never meditated before, and they're saying the same thing. They're enjoying the benefits of it.
So do you have like a special link for people for that?
I do.
Okay, yeah, please send that to me. I'll put it in the description too, because I've never seen the app, but I will check it out. And then everyone listening, you guys can check it out too. So it'll be down there in the description. Awesome. No, I mean, listen, man, it's in every self-help book. It's what every successful speaker talks about. But a million books and speakers can't be wrong, right? If everyone's talking about it for a reason. And I had an absence of a morning routine for a long time between cellular sales leadership and today. I used to do it every single day when I was in cellular sales leadership. I read the 5 a.m. club. I'd be up at 5 a.m. We would do book club calls. We would just the day would start immediately. And I always felt better and more tired at the end of the day because you're getting up earlier, and that definitely has an impact on your energy, at least for me. But recently, with that book that I mentioned to you, The Artist's Way, if you do follow it, it will disrupt your morning routine because a big chunk of your routine will be the exercises in this book. And one of the biggest exercises in the book that I've really, really enjoyed, and it stays with you for the whole day, is called the morning pages, which is very interesting. So Julia Cameron talks about how to unleash your creativity, how to unlock it, right? How to make it blossom even more. And it's a really great book, Todd, because she talks about God a lot in the book, right? And she says you can believe as God as a person, you can believe God as a force, but she believes God is the creative weave in the space in between everything. That everything we do, everything we see is created, is creative. And the morning pages is every day you write in your journal or a book or on white pieces of paper 3 pages of whatever you want every single day. So you can write 3 pages of how yesterday went, what you want to do today, what tomorrow looks like. You can write about what sucks in your life right now. You can write about what you want your life to look like, what your 30s were like, what your 40s are like. You can write a book. You can write about whatever you want. There's no right or wrong answer. And she talks about, and you mentioned it earlier, the pen to paper connection. She talks about the magic that happens when you write longhand like that for 3 pages, which takes me about 50 minutes to do every single morning. It's undeniable that you connect with source because while it's difficult at the beginning, sometimes your pen just starts to move. And it gets to the point where I'm writing and writing and writing and my hand hurts and I'm like, I got to keep going because the flow is going, right? And when you're connected to that flow, to me, that flow is God. Like when I'm in front of a room of 100 people or whatever it is, it's really not me speaking. And I'm sure you experience this too, especially when you're really in the heat of something that you're doing. I've seen you in the state, so I know you are. It's like you're not even yourself anymore, but you're channeling this greater force. You're channeling this entity that isn't you because afterwards I watch a video of it and I'm like, oh, I said that? That's funny. I don't remember saying that. Things just come into your mind and you say it. So it's not even that I'm speaking. It's not even that I'm playing the guitar. It's not even that I'm doing these things. It's like another force steps in and takes control. Do you relate to that at all when you're really in a state of flow yourself?
So I think that's where meditations taught me a lot as well. They say, and then some of these meditations, look for what's looking, look for the thinker, look
Whoa,
at look at your head. There's a lot of deep things that they try to instill through this waking up app, which really try to reframe that notion of the us that we think we are being that maybe that little person sitting just behind your eyes inside your head. And they go into really a lot of depth about that, and most of this is based in some Buddhist traditions and things like that, but I think that's really what you're tapping into when you're experiencing that. And I've certainly experienced that numerous times between music or speaking or any of those things. But I don't know that we necessarily have the tools to explain it, so it feels like magic, right?
yeah,
It feels like magic, but this is where meditation gives me, I think, a little more perspective on that as a creative, because I'm practicing that, right? When I meditate, I'm actually practicing that sort of sense of out of body experience. And
true.
being guided through that and it's being talked about. And so for me, it's made me far more comfortable in that. It is certainly when you're performing a song really well or something like that, it is like an out of body experience. But when you practice that in silence by yourself, you got your earbuds in and you're just, doing that frequency, that day by day, um, you can't help but be different. You just can't help but be a different person. It's
Yes.
it's really amazing.
It changes how you interact with the world in
It
every shape,
does.
way, form. I spoke to this guy on the podcast, and he was a little woo woo, which he did it well. I like the conversation actually, but he talked about something called the God Walk. And he'll go outside every single day for 30 minutes, no fail. Every day he does this, rain, shine, snow, whatever. And he doesn't listen to music. He doesn't listen to audiobooks. He just walks outside and asks questions. He's got like a set of questions that he asks himself every day. Like, am I doing the right things? What should I be doing next? I have this problem. And he'll say the problem out loud and he'll say, what can I do as a solution? And by the end of this walk, he has answers to all these questions. And then it begs the question, are we giving ourselves this answer? Or is it some greater force, some God, some intelligence that's providing us these answers to our questions? So, we could talk about this forever, but for people who are asking themselves, what's next? What should I do? How should I express myself? Start asking yourself these powerful questions. Tony Robbins says that the quality of your life is the result of the questions that you ask yourself. So ask yourself different questions, incorporate a morning routine, get the Waking Up app, link in the description to go grab a free trial using Todd's link, and work on yourself. Really a lot of this comes back to making time for yourself and your connection with source, whatever source looks like for you, because source looks like something different for everyone. Religion, traditions, rituals, it's different for everybody. So I think it's really cool that you've incorporated that into your life this last year, brother. That's awesome.
Yeah, and the biggest takeaway is no matter where you are, you may wake up every day and go, I don't need to do that. Listen, the thing is, I think for me at least, I do need to do that no matter how my life is going. That solitude, that quiet time, that stuff is more important than ever. It just is. And for reasons we all know, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And the results you find from it are often different than the results that you expect to get from it.
Hmm. Very true.
So the last time we talked about what you call the currency of advocates. And I've gotten to be in the room as you explained this concept to people several times. And we talked about it for an hour last time. So I recommend I'll link that episode below for you guys to go check out the last conversation with Todd a year ago. So I'd like to ask you, for those who didn't watch that, who just want a 1-minute snippet of what the currency of advocates is, can you give us that snippet? And could you tell us, is anything new to this concept? Like, have you learned anything new over the last year when it comes to this idea that you talk about all the time?
Surely. So the currency of advocates. In this instance, I'm using the word currency, think Bitcoin or the dollar or a stock, and think about what it means to have an advocate. We are advocates. We have advocates, varying numbers of advocates. But the thing to think of here is investing in building advocates. Okay, so what is the number of advocates that you currently have for your business or your practice right now? If you could write them down, what is the number? And what would it look like if you doubled the number of advocates? Well, if you were going to get busy doing that, I would say the most important thing to do is to understand what an advocate is, what an advocate does. And the best way to gain advocates is to become an advocate yourself. And so, if I have an opportunity to help someone with a referral connection, a piece of knowledge, whatever that looks like, I am going to be a good advocate and I'm going to give. And in doing so, I'm also teaching others how to be an advocate on my behalf. And then we begin some reciprocal things start to happen, right? And if you think about it, doubling your number of advocates is probably one of the most impactful things that you could do for your business. You just can't imagine what happens when you do that.
Hmm. So
And
how do
so,
you
sorry,
build new advocates? Like, I
yeah.
know we talked about this last time, but how do you build new advocates? Is it simply, not simply, but is it by referring, giving, connecting? Like, how do you build new ones? Because that's, if when you said write down the advocates you have for your business, like obviously some people immediately came to mind, but really it's a short list if I think about it. People I personally know I could call and act like I'm talking to a best friend. It's a small list. So how do you build new advocates?
So I've been taught how to be an advocate by some amazing people. And just being frank with you, the way they've done it really just blew my mind. And this is where it started for me. I had a great friend who, in his daily planner, he would sit down and he would write down what he was doing for the day. He was writing into his daily plan, find Todd Bailey a referral.
Yeah, yeah. Zach Haggis, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And I think that was such an eye-opening thing for me. And then others as well. And I've seen how they operate. And what they were doing was they were teaching me how good advocacy works. And so I said, Okay, well, they're committed. These are people are committed to me. And shame on me if I don't reciprocate that, right? I know, like, and trust these people. So why would I not be an advocate on their behalf? And so I became an advocate. And then in doing so, as I'm walking around and meeting new people, I'm doing my best, very best, to be an advocate on their behalf. And it's not always like a my hands out, here's this. It's not always reciprocity,
Yeah.
but I believe that if you become a habitual contributor, the advocacy grows. So contribute, just contribute. You don't stand there with your hand out. Hey, I gave you that. Where's my, it's not
Yeah.
about that. It's about contributing. As long as you know that you're referring to people that are, like and trust. Um, and I do a lot of networking. As you know, I'm in BNI, I'm in Entrepreneurs Organization, I'm an active networker. So when I'm doing one-to-ones, I'm learning and I'm, teaching about how to be an advocate. So far for the year, I think I'm leading, and thank you for closed business for BNI, which is really cool. So it always comes around. I say serve the collective in turn will serve you. And the currency of advocates is really all about making an investment in your advocacies. Each individual advocate that you are with, make that investment in them. And just like a stock, just like a bond, just like Bitcoin, like whatever, it will go up collectively. It will go up. And when I say go up, what I mean is an opportunity like I'm working on now, I won't go into too many details, comes along, and you're not up against any competition. It's like a huge opportunity that I'm up against nobody for because I was plucked, handpicked to do it because I believe I've been a great advocate for the right people and the right causes. And again, you serve the collective will serve you.
So what's the opportunity, Todd?
Well, more to come soon.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
That's awesome. Congrats, brother. I'm sure it's pretty awesome because you have a lot of opportunities. So I know the gleam in your eye when you've got one that really stands out. So I'm excited to hear about it. All right, so I'm really curious about this. So this sounds really really good, and you meet a lot of people, a lot of people. So kind of a two part here. Why did Zach Haggis choose you to put in his daily planner? Did he have a list of people, or was it refer people to Todd Bailey? And how do you keep track of all the people that you've connected with? Like even with the Saratoga BNI, like there's 12 to 15 people in that room and maybe more now. How do you keep track and think, oh, I'm going to refer this person to this person. I'm going to refer them to this. Like how do you keep track about when it comes to contribution?
So again, I call it habitual contribution because
Yeah.
it becomes a habit and I don't really know. I don't have to think much about it. I just identify a need somewhere
Yes.
and I know that I can fill that need with a really great person that does that thing. Um, And what you find out is it's a lot like a snowball or a compounding effect. The more you do this, the more your advocacy becomes valuable. So if I make an introduction now, what I'm finding is the message looks something like this. Hey, so and so, you really need to meet so and so. I believe there's some alignment there and perhaps some mutual benefit. Why don't you go ahead and connect? Happy connecting. And then the next messages say, if Todd says I need to meet you, I need to meet you, you know?
Mm,
And so you begin to be what we refer to as the hub of the wheel, right?
mm-hmm.
And so how does that work? I don't know that I necessarily have in my brain, the ability to know everyone, but at the same
Yes.
time, it just hits me when it's a fit, it's a fit. And I know that the people that I refer, the people that refer to me and vice versa, are people that I know, like, and trust. They know, like, and trust me. And that's the first thing is you really have to have established trust. And that's why I believe Zach would have chose to write my name down daily is he trusted me
Yeah.
in a big way, right? And trust is, if you know the trust formula, it's really about what you do well over time, not what you do well once. And so consistency, just living your why, being there, showing up with your best self. I used to do that at cellular sales when I was a sales rep early on. I would set a goal to serve someone so well that they would ask for my card.
Mm.
And I know there were others that were like, oh, thank you for coming in. Here's my card. But it was like a little game for me. I was like, I wonder if I could orient myself or treat them a certain way enough to get them to ask for my card. And
Yeah.
more often than not, they would. And I made some lifelong friends from sitting in those retail stores and doing that.
From customers, you're saying that have
Yeah.
become your friends.
Friends and clients and just really, really important people.
So, how did you remember reorienting yourself in order to get them to ask you for your card? Like that the conscious focus of I'm going to treat this person so well that they're going to ask for my card. What physically or verbally changed in those interactions to cause them to ask you for your card?
I think that there's a lot of basics that we forget, especially today. The biggest one for me was always listening. If you make good eye contact and listen to someone, you cannot imagine how far that goes. You just can't imagine. People don't feel seen, heard as much anymore.
Yeah.
There's such a layer of this digital infrastructure between real connections today. So that was always the first thing for me was just be an active listener. Make sure I made eye contact. And then all of the things that I've learned in my professional career in sales is, being able to listen and then bring it back to them and then bring them a solution. More often than not, just that simple act of letting them feel seen and heard and then repeating it back and giving them a great solution. That's a simple process, but that was really what I did. And with a smile.
So the same thing that you do right now when connecting with people anywhere
Mhm.
started really in the retail stores in a way.
Perhaps even before that. But it also doesn't hurt that I'm a performer at heart, right? So I can kind of orient myself in a way that my body is in control, my voice, my tonal range. So I have a lot of tools that, because of my upbringing, I think help me in all those things that I'm doing. They
Yeah.
sort of creep in ways you never really would have seen. Like, for instance, I was a voice major in college, music, performance. And in the last few years, I've been doing some radio commercials or voiceover work. And I remember one day just kind of going, I never would have seen that connection, but turns out that's helped me learn to control my voice in certain ways. So,
Yeah. So cool, dude. Dude, I never know the direction our conversations are going to go, especially when we're dedicated. We have an hour to sit down and really just dive into things. And I'm always so happy with where the conversation goes, man. Like, you're a really special person. You're a great friend of mine. I've learned a lot from you, whether it was working with you as a team lead or working with you while you were my team lead. Like, it's just really cool to see where you've gone in the last 10 years that I've known you, which, dude, it's been over 10 years now, which is crazy. So you were my age when I met you, pretty much, which means I was 20. So it's crazy, dudes. I'm really happy that now I get to talk with you and other people get to listen and sharing everything that you've learned and what you have to teach. Because I know you're a really wise person, man. You'd never say it about yourself, but you're a wise man and you're an old soul, and people love you for a reason, brother. So I'm just grateful to know you. I'm grateful to have you back on the show. And if other people want to tap into this wisdom more often, where's the best place they can find you, man, to start a conversation or just to follow along?
Certainly, Todd Bailey. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, my website, tbphotopics.com. But yeah, I would say, particularly for someone that's in the creative spaces, it's kind of hard to get going in a career like that, right? Where do you go for a job if you're a graphic designer? There's certainly opportunities. Where do you go if you're a photographer? If you're just getting started, maybe want to start your own practice or business, but certainly reach out. It doesn't hurt. I've helped a lot of people, and even if we don't ultimately work together, if there's some piece of wisdom I can impart that helps their journey, I'd be happy to do that.
Super cool. Links are in the description, guys. So go follow him, check out his website, as well as the Waking Up app and the last episode we shot together. So whatever you're down there for, there's something for you. Dude, this has been great. Todd, thanks for coming back on the show. I can't wait for round 3. Maybe we'll make it April of next year. Unless you've got some really cool revelations before then, I'm always happy to have you on, brother. Thank you.
Hopefully we do. Thank you for having me, Brendan.
Once again, another great conversation with the man himself, Todd Bailey. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to go support Todd. Go follow him. Go check out what he's up to. Go to his website. See if any of his services make sense for you. And start a conversation if it makes sense as well. And especially if you're a creative and you want to take it to that next level, or you're unsure of what's next, that conversation. And he's always got great advice. Be sure to share the show with just one other person who could use it as well. If you took away value from the episode, we don't have sponsors. We don't run ads because we don't want to interrupt your experience. And we hope that made the viewing and listening experience better for you. Thank you so much for tuning and watching and listening. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.